What is this? A high school reunion for ghetto girls? That's what Officer James Dale sneered, his voice slicing through the tension of a packed Richmond courtroom like a blade dipped in arrogance. He meant it to humiliate, to strip a black woman of her dignity in front of a room full of strangers in power suits, to remind everyone who he thought held control. That cheap dress and that attitude, he scoffed, as if confidence in a woman. Like Evelyn Bell was some kind of offense. Dale had that small-town bully energy, badge heavy on his chest, ego puffed with years of unchallenged authority, convinced that loud words and legal jargon made him invincible. What he didn't realize, not yet, was that the woman he was mocking, the one in the orange blouse with her back straight and her eyes impossibly calm, wasn't just any witness or some nobody caught in the machinery. That was Evelyn Bell, and she had come armed not with weapons, but with truth. She held a file that could split his career wide open and expose the rot beneath the courtroom floor. That morning, the air felt thick, like the room knew something was coming. Cameras lined the back, reporters whispered at the edges, the public gallery overflowing as if a governor, not a cop, was on trial. The prosecution's files were stacked like bricks, and everyone was waiting for blood. Into that storm, Evelyn walked. No escort, no fanfare, just her and that quiet resolve. No badge, no nameplate. Just a crossbody bag, worn shoes, and that orange blouse that broke the courthouse dress code but fit her like armor. She didn't rush, didn't flinch when every head turned. She took a seat at the back, the seat people sit in when they're expected to stay invisible, but she wasn't hiding. She watched. She waited. She was the eye of the storm. When Dale looked at her. Even for a second, he felt it. That uneasy ripple when control slips, when the script you've written in your head starts to fray. He tried to cover it up with a laugh, a cheap joke to the judge about clerks in court. Some chuckled out of habit more than humor, but Evelyn didn't move. She met his stare, steady and still, and in that quiet she said everything. Dale tried to regain footing, barked louder, ordered her to leave, told her she wasn't invited, but that wasn't a request. It was a threat wrapped in courtroom authority. Evelyn didn't raise her voice, didn't raise her hands. She just pulled out her phone calmly, casually, like she was checking the time. But that glow from the screen, it cut through the room. And Dale? He froze. Not because of the camera, but because someone, finally, was looking through him, not at him. And what they saw wasn't power. It was fear in a uniform. The room fell into a hush that was louder than any shout. A clerk glanced at the judge. Judge Hollowell didn't flinch, kept flipping through papers like nothing was happening, like the law was blind and maybe a little deaf too. Then Dale snapped. He grabbed Evelyn by the collar, fast and rough, thinking force could erase presence. But Evelyn didn't scream, didn't resist. She let him wrinkle her blouse, let the room watch every second, and gave him a look that burned with something. Older, deeper, and far more dangerous than rage. That moment broke the illusion. The young lawyer in the front row gripped his briefcase too hard. A clerk opened her mouth, then shut it again when the judge looked away. Reporters leaned forward, but said nothing, because this wasn't just about Dale's violence. It was about all the silence that let it happen, for a nod, for anyone to say he was right, but no one did. He was alone now, and Evelyn, still unmoved. When he finally let go, that crease in her blouse felt like a scar on his soul. He slumped into his seat, fingers twitching against the desk. But the damage had already landed. The air had changed. That silence, once passive, had turned into accusation. But let's rewind. This wasn't Evelyn's first encounter with Officer James Dale. Years ago, her father, a history teacher, was cuffed in front of his students by Dale for trying to break up a schoolyard fight. The charges? Disturbing the peace, resisting, arrest. No one questioned it. No one challenged it. He was thrown into the system and came out dead 3 months later after an altercation that left no marks, no records, no justice. All Evelyn got back was a cracked book, a broken watch, and a letter her father never mailed. She didn't scream. She didn't march. She went silent. She studied law, not to argue in court, but to understand the machinery, how power moves, how files disappear, how men like Dale get away with it. She worked her way into the Inspector General's office, read every case Dale ever touched. Same pattern, same shadows, missing evidence, closed complaints. She mapped it all. waited. Then came the new assault. Case, Richmond again, Judge Hollowell again, and Evelyn moved like smoke, into cheap rentals, under fake names, building a network of the systems discarded, a technician who saved server logs before they were erased, a court clerk with backup drives, a disgraced law student who lost his internship for asking the wrong questions. She didn't ask for trust. She earned it. Quietly. Relentlessly. There were betrayals, too. A driver who planted a tracker in her folder, tip-offs that forced her to disappear overnight. She handwrote files, hid evidence in lockers and trash bins, waited until the day came. She caught them, Dale and Hollowell, on tape, plotting to bury another case. The audio got scrubbed before she could secure it, but it didn't matter. The crack had spread too far. And now, in that courtroom, Evelyn Bell wasn't there to plead or protest. She was there to witness and let the system watch itself unravel. But she remembered every word, every pause, every threat whispered in that cold room when they thought no one was listening. She remembered it, copied it down by hand, hid it like a match in dry grass, waiting for the right spark. So when Dale tried to humiliate her in court, she let him. When he grabbed her by the collar in front of that packed gallery, she didn't resist. She let him tighten his own noose with every smug word, every careless move. And then, when the timing clicked into place like a lock giving way, Evelyn stood, slowly, deliberately, and walked to the front of the courtroom. No one moved, not even the judge. She plugged her phone into the speaker system without a word. And then, clarity. The audio played just 3 lines, 3 sentences that cracked open the room like a struck bell. James Dale's voice, low and sure. "Want me to do it the usual way?" Judge Hollowell's reply, colder. "No, it has to be cleaner." Dale again. "I'll erase the name from the system." That was all. No drama, no speech. Just the truth, raw and impossible to spin. The room didn't gasp. It held its breath. Every head turned to Hollowell, not as a man of the law, but as a man exposed. The judge didn't blink. Dale, red-faced and scrambling, lunged for Evelyn like a drowning man reaching for control. But she was already pulling out a small blue badge. Evelyn Bell, investigator, Department of Justice. That was the moment the balance of power shattered. Reporters raised their cameras. The gallery that had sat back in silence now leaned forward, realizing they hadn't been watching a trial. They'd been watching a sting, a setup. But this time, the trap wasn't for some nameless defendant. It was for Dale, for Hollowell, for every quiet deal and disappeared file. Evelyn didn't gloat, didn't even smile. She simply looked around the courtroom and said, "This isn't a trial for James Dale. This is a trial to see if the system can even stand the truth." After that, everything moved fast. Evelyn had already done the work. Years of files, body, cam footage, erased logs, memos, financial trails showing hush money tucked into fake programs, all of it sent out. Civil rights groups, the press, watchdogs. The dam broke. Stories long buried surfaced with receipts in hand. Carter, who'd been slapped by Dale and called aggressive in the report. Carla Jennings, whose teenage son was arrested without a lawyer and funneled into detention for a fight he didn't start. Every case Evelyn had tracked came pouring out, stitched together with evidence that couldn't be denied. The media firestorm followed. Public outrage became pressure, and that pressure forced hearings. For the first time in decades, the people who ran the system weren't just questioned, they were on trial. The attorney general, the judge, the officer, people who once whispered behind closed doors now stood up. Technicians, clerks, even former victims. They testified, this time with courage and backup. Evelyn never claimed the spotlight. She released everything anonymously, let the truth speak on its own. Dale was suspended, his name stripped from plaques and records. Hollowell left his last hearing in silence. No longer a judge, just a man in a stained robe. The attorney general tried to deflect, divide, buy time. But Evelyn had saved the final blow. Financial records. $1 million transfer disguised as a stability fund funneled to cover systemic silence. It was all there. Black and white, unshakable. When the final vote came, live streamed to millions, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a reckoning. Impeachment for Hollowell, suspension for Langston, and in the gallery sat the faces of those who had once suffered in silence. Now witnesses, not victims. Evelyn Bell didn't take the stand that day. Didn't make a speech or ask for thanks. She just watched the darkness split open and let the light come in. Later, in her journal, she wrote one last line. Justice isn't about who holds the file. It's about what happens when silence ends. So now I ask you, when you see someone stand alone in a room full of people pretending not to see, what do you do? Do you look away or do you listen? Because in the end, justice doesn't begin in the courtroom. It begins the moment someone refuses to stay quiet. And maybe, just maybe, all it takes is one voice, one steady hand, and the courage to strike the match.